Hey guys, so some really exciting news coming out of the world of VAIL VR, because I believe this is going to affect everything moving forward when it comes to first-person shooters in VR, and I also want to speculate on what this means for VR shooters going into the future. So I was just made aware of this about 3 days after it was announced, and by the looks of it, it is a crowdfunding program that VAIL VR has put together for this beautiful thing they just announced, a roadmap. And on this roadmap, the very next thing they're going to be doing is, yes, you saw it correctly, an extraction shooter. And after this extraction shooter, they are releasing official battle royale. After that, they're releasing a campaign, and after that, they're releasing user generated levels. I would think would be something analogous to creator mode in Halo. Now, all of these things are hugely exciting, things that have been missing in the first person shooter space. They're quite literally about to hit every single popular genre in the first person shooter space since these games were in their prime. This is massively exciting because for those of you who've not played VAIL, I would easily call it the best shooter in VR in terms of their mechanics, just shooting, scopes, the visuals. It was on PC, it's a dedicated Unreal Engine 5 shooter and it looks absolutely immaculate. But VAIL has had an interesting history, one that I'm not an expert on, but I've heard a lot about it because of how great of a game it is, how difficult the development process has been for them. VAIL has had a convoluted past. They started out with a similar crowdfunding project like this to develop the overall best VR shooter in Unreal Engine 5 on the PC to be an official VR esports game. With the long development cycles and just not as much interest for this type of game in a competitive space, VAIL had to change tactics, and that caused about a year of silence from them to work on a whole new plan. And of course, the first notable thing in that plan was to bring VAIL to the standalone headsets. I think back when VAIL released into early beta, people were still fairly sure VR would have taken off in the personal computing space, still seeing the hype from Half-Life Alyx resonate through the gaming community, but developers quickly realized that only having your game on a personal computer was never going to make it popular enough to actually fund the game itself. Now that virtual reality and MetaQuest headsets are building their own ecosystem, almost everybody has realized that the money is in standalone, as people don't want to pay for PC and headsets at the same time. They want to buy one item that doesn't cost them all too much and be able to experience VR for themselves. Because developers realized this, VAIL accomplished a standalone version of their game. And after this, they were off to the races, which was a 1.0 full release. When the game released, it brought in an amazing shooter with pretty generic game modes, such as Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag type modes. But that being said, it was the foundation of something beautiful, an incredibly well-made VR first-person shooter. And ever since that full release, I always thought to myself, it would be amazing if this game had other game modes, such as an extraction shooter or battle royale. Not only are we getting that exact thing, we're also getting a campaign mode and user-generated levels. In my mind, this game is going to have everything a shooter needs to be the greatest VR shooter of all time. Now, what do I think this is actually going to look like, and what does this mean for games like Ghost of Tabor, the only extraction shooter in VR currently? Well, a thing I was always taught in business was that competition is actually a good thing. Having another extraction shooter in the same space as Ghost of Tabor is going to draw more attention to the genre itself, as well as put pressure on the developers to build something unique and not just copy each other. Now, because VAIL VR is such a polished game as they have it already, I believe this type of extraction shooter is going to look very different from what Ghost of Tabor is doing with their Tarkov type mechanics. In Ghost of Tabor, a large focus is on the loot and making money, and this type of in-game economy character progression is a huge chunk of what makes Ghost of Tabor or games like Escape from Tarkov so fun. But in a game like VAIL VR, I believe they're going to do this quite differently. And the reason being, like I said, it is such a polished game, and I don't think they're going to spend a huge amount of time trying to create a bunch of different assets for a heavily looting focused game. Let me know if you're familiar with a game called Hunt Showdown. It was like the main competitor with Escape from Tarkov for the longest time. That and Escape from Tarkov were the only extraction shooters for almost a decade now before anything meaningful really came out. But they're so far different from each other that they couldn't even be compared as competitors. Tarkov is a modern hardcore shooter that focuses on loot and in-game economy and trader levels to scale your progression through a series of months before they actually wipe everybody's progression at the end. Hunt Showdown is more of an objective-based extraction shooter that's based out of the late 1800s, using old Western style revolvers and lever action rifles, where players have to hunt a certain boss that's in the map or certain couple of bosses resources that are in a map to gain a reward and extract alive. In Hunt Showdown, there's no wipes, there's no heavy focus on loot. It's more about the object in the game and completing it while facing NPCs and other players to do so. Now, one seriously notable thing about that is that Hunt Showdown had an incredible foundation to work from, and they didn't have to waste their time building on loot and in-game economy to develop the game. Therefore, the game feels far more polished than Tarkov. And if that made any sense, I believe VAIL will go along a similar approach. It takes a huge load off the developers not having to develop all those extra assets and worry about the bugs they might bring. So I believe VAIL will go this direction, being more of an objective-based abstraction shooter, where there's a similar mission or goal to accomplish within a raid amongst all players that are in that raid, as opposed to just going in and accomplishing your own quests and in-game progression, or through quests that are only specific to you. This could largely differentiate VAIL VR from Ghost of Tabor, and not actually make some sort of risk to each other, but actually improve the space overall. Now, with the Battle Royale, on the other hand, I think that's a different story. There's only so much you can do with Battle Royales, and VAIL being such a polished shooter as it is going to be a serious competitor with a game like Contractor Showdown. I think what makes me so excited about this project is that VAIL feels amazing to play. The shooting, the reloading, the scopes, fighting other players, and just the beautiful graphics and visuals that you immerse yourself in when you play the game. And a big part of this for me is lore. They are building a huge universe with fleshed out lore already, even being as generic as it is with just team deathmatch and capture the flag. Their lore is captivating, and you can tell when you're inside of the game. Playing this as an in-depth extraction shooter is going to be a serious treat for all of us, and a huge pro for VR in general. Now, I'm so sorry I didn't do my research on how they're doing this crowdfunding, if you're actually able to invest yourself, but by the looks of things here, it looks like you can, so I'm going to put a link down below. They've already raised over $100,000 to continue developing their ideas, and if this does get realized into what I think it is, I think it's going to be one of the most important things to happen to VR shooters ever. I believe VAIL is trying to be the next Destiny or Halo. They are really pulling out all stops, and with such an incredible foundation that they already have, I believe they can pull this off with enough money, of course. I'll continue updating you on what they're doing now that they're stepping into the extraction shooter space. It will become a part of this channel, and as they release information, I will let you guys know here. So like and subscribe, and leave a comment below on how you think this is going to look. I personally am extremely excited about this. Fortunately, I have no timelines. We'll see. The little green bar on the roadmap is really close to that extraction shooter game mode. Is this to raise money, or are we going to have something to get our hands on before the end of the year? Let me know, and thanks for watching.